We are not alone. You are watching Contact TV with your hosts, Leslie Mitchell-Clark
and Wes Roberts,
exploring ufology, metaphysics, and beyond with the world's foremost experts. We are not alone. And hello, everybody out there in internet land, interweb land. I'm Leslie Mitchell-Clark, and this is
Wes Roberts.
And we are so thrilled to welcome you once again to another episode of Contact TV. And I'm so surprised to realize it's been a full 2 years since our guest this evening, or this afternoon, has joined us. And that's way too long for someone so fascinating, I tell you. We've got to have him on more often than that. But we are so pleased to welcome back noted educator, UFO researcher, clinician, exopolitician, news director of Zealand Communications, co-host of Zoomer TV's The Conspiracy Show, and also I believe he's going to be a featured speaker. He's very involved with the Alien Cosmic Expo 2017. And we are, of course, talking about the one and only Victor Viggiani. Hello, Victor. How are you? Can you hear us?
Victor, you're frozen at the moment, so it's going to... Oh, there you are. All right, Victor, we're on. Can you hear us?
I can hear you, for sure. Yeah, fine.
All right. Excellent.
So, welcome.
And
well, it's great to be with you. It's just fantastic. Yeah.
Excellent. Before we get going into some of this deep subject matter that we have to discuss with you, some of our listeners may want to know what is Zealand Communications. And Zealand Communications is an independent news service dedicated to the compilation, distribution, and analysis of news and intelligence related to the national security and geopolitical implications of the disclosure of extraterrestrial presence now engaging the human race. So that is what you're up to and what you're about, Victor. And I was fascinated, as was Wes, to read on your website information about this brand new, I suppose you could call it, organization of disclosure activists that has just sort of burst onto the scene. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about these good folks.
Yeah, well, it's a group that has been, I guess, spontaneously assembled by a couple of people, Chris Kalka and Lisa Garlorno in the United States. And we have a group of people who've come together to attempt to draw up an international manifesto on what the implications of disclosure really are. And they're a young group. They're sort of novitiates at all of this, but they do have some really great ideas in terms of identifying, clarifying, and presenting what the issues are all about with respect to disclosure. And what they're attempting is to distribute this manifesto, and you can read it at disclosureactivists.com. You can read that manifesto, and it's quite clear. They've really very carefully identified what all the issues are in terms of, what these craft are, where they might come from, what the implications are in terms of consciousness, in terms of free energy, the political implications of all of this. So they're really trying to isolate and distill what the major issues are. And I must congratulate them on, especially Lisa Galarno, who's really defining it very, very carefully. She's a wonderful writer. And if you really want to look at some of the things that she's written, I really invite your listeners to go to disclosureactivist.com and read some of the stuff that's going on there. So how far it goes, we're not quite sure. But one of the things that we are attempting to do is to distribute this manifesto to as many international organizations as we possibly can, starting from the United Nations right down through all of the NGOs and activist groups, Greenpeace, medical associations, the international, solicitors and lawyers associations, scientific groups. We want to thrust this manifesto onto the international scene and get the reaction from some of these international groups who've never really heard about this issue before, and get their reaction and maybe create some partnerships among some of these groups to really have them say, how long has this been going on and why haven't we known about this before? So, can you imagine, let's suppose you're the chairman of the, American Medical Association, you get the manifesto in your mailbox one afternoon, in your email, and they read it and say, this is interesting. Where will this go from here? So this is the kind of attempt to circumvent government. We don't need government in this. Yeah. We sort of set aside government. They're inexorably irrelevant in this whole conversation at this point. They may become relevant soon, but right now government is irrelevant in disclosure. We're not going cap in hand to government to say, oh, please tell us about what this extraterrestrial issue is all about. We're not even going there right now, because we know that even if we do ask the question and we get an answer, it's going to be a spin. So we just want to put them aside right now, go to some of these international organizations, get their feedback, and perhaps, with any kind of luck at all, mainstream media might pick up on the fact that a United States NGO, some in Australia, someplace in Europe or Belgium, might pick this information up and move it forward on the international media spectrum, and then go from there. If mainstream media, or even just European media or minor regional media in the United States, picks up some of this information, it might give it some traction to become an item of disclosure dialogue, a disclosure about what this issue is all about. So we're kind of doing an end run on the big media and big government to say, listen, this is something we need to talk about. Here are the issues, and here's the manifesto. Let's talk about it.
Do you think, Victor, that Lisa and Russell themselves may be experiencers? I mean, something profound must be motivating these very intelligent people to face, potential ridicule. Well, you know what it's all about when you sort of come out,
Oh, for sure,
as it
yeah.
were. They're willing to put themselves out there in a very vulnerable way, and I have to wonder if they have some personal experiences.
I don't know about Russ. Russ is, I've spoken with Russ a number of times. I don't sense that Russ may be an experiencer. He hasn't admitted it to me. But I think, no, I know that Lisa has expressed the idea that she has had experiences. And, as soon as someone puts themselves out in explicating the fact that they may have had these experiences, once, twice, over the years, whatever it happens to be, once you go on record as being an experiencer, holds barred to that. You know what this issue is all about in the very DNA of your own material being. And Lisa's not writing just because she's got documented information. She's writing from the point of view of having experienced something very, very bizarre in her own life spectrum that has indicated to her that this is a real issue. This is not something that we need to fool around about, and that she needs to bring other people who've had these kinds of experiences into that whole relationship to bring forward the reality that we're not alone and we're being engaged. So she's done a really great job. And in addition to that, I must re-emphasize the fact that she is an incredible writer. I will sit and read any one of her articles or the manifesto is just beautifully written. So she's a really great writer. And if anyone, takes the time, and, I'm afraid to say it, sometimes people don't take the time to read good articles, to read good work. And they're not long. It's not like they're, theoretical, dissertations. They're very short. They're very to the point. They're extremely clear and clarify the issue from her perspective. So I think that if we categorize Lisa as someone who has had some kind of experience with this, off-world, with these off-world civilizations, she's speaking from her own personal perspective, and also to what the experience of being an abductee or an experiencer is all about. So it's a kind of a twofold kind of thing that she's experiencing, And I think many people who want to find out more about this need to know both of the aspects, the political and
Right.
experiential aspect of what she's gone through.
Indeed. Are you of the opinion, Victor? Let's see, we call our sort of the concepts of our friend Grant Cameron, that many people, including Lisa, I would say, are receiving, for lack of a better term, downloads or information. So, you know, when we might be expecting to see somebody show up on the White House lawn, which may be
Mm-hmm.
difficult from a energetic point of view, there are many, many people
Mm-hmm.
who are actually receiving information on a regular basis. Now, of course, we have to weed out the people who are, you know, mentally unstable, because I can tell you as a hypnotherapist who works with people who believe they're experiencers, not all of the people who believe they are experiencers. They're having other types of
Mm-hmm.
dissociative disorders or what have you. But still, in all, you know, there are so many legitimate people that are, including Grant Cameron himself, that are absolutely receiving downloaded information. So, do you see this as a benevolent type of phenomena?
That's a really difficult question. What I try to do is I try to bring forward to media credible information that they can latch on to establish some sort of credible reality about this issue. And so, what one of my jobs it really is to create a solid converging lines of evidence that mean something to journalists, and that's where I'm headed. I do that. What
You're breaking up there, Victor, so we may have to ask you to repeat in a sec.
doubtful, uh, non-evidential, not evidential. I don't know. But when I produce information for journalists, they want cold hard facts. Okay, and so do I in one sense. But I also understand you're
Our guest is just breaking up a bit, so hopefully he'll be back.
I understand what's going on. But how do you present this kind of quote unquote downloaded information to people in the journalistic community to say, well,
Mhm.
tangible, more immediate? So I'm sort of between trying to present to me because my estimation of this is that mainstream media, once they latch onto this, are going to go to the cold, hard facts of what the UFO ET issue is all about. And if I begin to introduce to this mainstream media, even if I capture their attention, if I begin to say, well, there's going to be people downloading information from extraterrestrials, they're going to say, Mr. Vigiani, bye. That's the that's the
Right,
reality of
right.
the issue. And I understand exactly where you're coming from. I totally agree with you. But what I need to do is present the cold hard facts about what this is all about. I'm talking about government documents, government involvement. Once we get into that, and they bite on that hook, then we can get into the John Mack stuff. I mean,
Oh,
I've
yeah.
read both his books. I've been with him. I've been with him in his office at Harvard University.
Wow.
I'm envious.
Yeah, me too. That's incredible, Victor.
These people who have actually met extraterrestrials, they are the kernel of this issue. But right now, I'm sorry to say, mainstream media is not ready to hear that message. Maybe they will be soon once they get into the other hard facts. Then we're going to say,
And we apologize for the breakups, audience. We're sorry about that. Internet connectivity problems.
do you want to hear about that or not? Let me
Yes.
know what your feelings are about that because we've got a ton of information about that.
Right, of
So we
course.
have to go in gradients of information. So, I understand what you're saying, but it's sometimes if you introduce something that's too far ahead of the curve for mainstream media, and these people in mainstream media, they're not all
Yeah.
they aren't. They're not that bright. They just want the kernel of the issue to put it on the front page or whatever it is. That's all they want. If we go too far ahead of the curve, they'll dismiss us as just crazies, and so we have to take it one step at a time. So my whole perspective is, what is the most coalescent and most dense information that the media might latch onto in order to push it forward and create an international dialogue. An international dialogue. I'm not talking about local radio station. I'm talking about an international. So what are the converging lines of evidence that tell us we're being engaged? And then once that's established, then we move on to all of the other stuff that we're talking about right now. And I'm sorry to say that the mainstream media will not engage the experiencers' information. Eventually, they, but it will only, it's, what is it going to show or a tablet? We need to give them a tablet. Say, swallow this, and it's like the blue pill.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And while our guest is speaking, folks, I'm just going to check on our internet connection. So we're sorry for the interruptions here.
For us to discuss, is it time for us to discuss this extraterrestrial issue, and where will it lead us after the fact that we begin discussing it? That's my
Indeed.
perspective on it.
Yeah. So we're really, for the initial, opening salvo, as it were, we really have to look more to the right brain, MUFON-oriented information, the Stanton Friedman, the, well, even Corso's book, I think, would fall into that category, but that
And
would
all of
be,
that. Yeah, I think we have to begin there. We have to begin there. That's where media is at. People have to understand what media is. Media is a very cut and dry representation of political and our cultural and social understanding of what's going on around us. And they only want the tangible stuff to begin with. And once we begin to, let's just suppose for a second that even any kind of mention of engagement of UFOs or the mention of UFOs as a reality it would begin to become a major focal point of mainstream media discourse. Be it ABC, NBC, CBS, CTV in Toronto and Canada, CBC. Let's just suppose that the UFO issue was placed on their plate and they digested that information and began to cover it. They would be the only initial point that the three of us were at 20 years ago.
Yeah.
They need to be there to begin with. And then they have to move forward with the guidance of good disclosure advocacy groups like the Disclosure Activists and Zealand Communications, and even the work that you're doing. We need to initiate them to begin to establish a dialogue with them about the UFO ET issue. And just start there. And once they grab onto that hook, then no holds are barred. We can go anywhere. If they buy into it to begin with, we're home free. If they don't, we're going to be struggling with this issue. But we can't begin with the more ephemeral, or how can I say it? The more, you know what I'm trying to say here.
Esoteric,
Good word, esoteric. We can't begin there. I really don't believe we can begin there with mainstream media, with many people across the esoteric nature. I like that word. The esoteric nature of this issue is a given. We all know that. We've been involved in this for 30 years. But the mainstream media, they're just in kindergarten about this. They don't have a clue about what's going on. Now, there are some people, like Huffington, Lee Spiegel, he's done a great job in trying to introduce this to the mainstream media. Not there yet. What we need to do is get this dialogue into the mainstream discourse and make it... make people talk about it like the way they're talking about the insanity of Donald Trump. The insanity and maniacal existence of this whoever this person is. I don't know who he is. I don't have a clue. But the American discourse, international discourse of this madman has consumed media over the last, since January, even before that. If we can get this issue into the mainstream media at a level of that kind of discourse, then
Indeed.
So people like us need to step up, especially if we're asked.
And even my organization, Zealand Communications,
Yeah.
we can introduce issues to them one pill at a time and say, and then eventually, I would hope that they would say, how long has this been going on and why didn't we know about it? Well, the reason is because you've been involved in a cyclical war economy and trying to find out why the United States government is in debt for trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, and you've got this madman in the White House. You're consumed by that. There are some other key issues that you
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense, Victor, and the key issues that they're
and they're
missing.
not answering our calls.
Yes.
That's where I say,
Sorry, Victor, we just missed your last comment. We didn't hear it.
okay.
Just your last
Well, I think
sentence.
that the mainstream media, the mainstream media is really missing the boat in terms of picking up the main essence of what we're talking about. They've been involved with all these other issues with respect to the political and the cyclical war economy, Syria, Brexit. This consumes our culture to ad nauseum.
Yeah.
But if we can get this issue on the same kind of platform, we might be able to engage some kind of rational, intelligent discourse about the fact that there are off-world civilizations that are knocking on our door, and we need to recognize that there's some really good evidence about the reality of that fact.
Indeed. In fact, certainly having very visible, respected people discussing this matter is Paul Hellyer. I can't think of anyone in Canada who would be more respected or believable. And he's also incredibly factual and incredibly, what's the word, level-headed and believable. And so no doubt, we need to utilize people in that vein who are going to be accepted by the media, because in this case, the media is not really the message.
Yeah, in a sense, Marshall McLuhan might have had it backwards. I don't know. I don't want to argue with an academic and intellectual like Marshall McLuhan, but maybe the message is the media. It's I don't know. It's something that's really in terms of what Paul has brought forward in the last since 2005 when I brought him forward at the address when Bozar was the airplanes that fly over your head. He said that point blank to the media, and that went around the world. And since then, he's been on record as being a real advocate about this. And you can't get someone more level-headed than a former deputy prime minister of Canada or a former minister of defense. He's approached the issue in a very calm, rational way all the time, and he's really done a great job in presenting the issue. And once again, presenting it to the media, but then the media has not grabbed on to the fact that a former Minister of Defense here in Canada and a former Deputy Prime Minister of Canada is totally involved and has become a complete advocate for the UFO ET issue. And I really fault the media for not understanding that someone of Paul's intelligence and gravitas advocacy, that they would not say, well, maybe this man might have something to say here. So the question is, why are they staying away from interviewing this man or bringing him forward on the major networks to say, listen, this is something that we need to pay attention to? There's all other kinds of issues that the Canadian government is involved in, and we see it every single day in the newspaper. All you have to do is read the Toronto Star, the Toronto Sun, the Globe and Mail to see the convoluted nature of the number of issues that Canadians are dealing with. Paul Hellyer ranks 95th on this. He doesn't rank at all.
Sure.
So what does the media need to do to raise his level of how can I say it, understanding and really incisive portrayal of what the ET was all about? So what's stopping our media from saying a former Deputy Prime Minister of Canada is really involved in this issue, about off-world civilization, and us being engaged by them. Maybe we should pay attention to it. So what we need to do is find the brave journalist, the brave media organization, the brave editorial a person in the back rooms of the Toronto Star or the CBC or CTV to say, you know what? This guy might have something to say here. Let's pay attention to it. That's what we're waiting for. And, how long do you wait for that? How long do you put forward information and say to yourself, well, we'll just wait to see how long it takes for mainstream media to pick this up? As far as I'm concerned, boys and girls, we've waited far too long. And we need to push forward more. And how we push forward is a function of our courage, is a function of our information, it's a function of our documentation. To put it forward is some realistically understanding journalists to say, you know what, let me just pay attention to this. So I can talk about that in a moment about a key journalist at the Toronto Star who might be able to do this for us.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I think Victor, you touched on some very, very fascinating points. One thing I would say, and I think one of the difficulties that we're facing in bringing this type of material into the mainstream purview is that as a society, we are internationally addicted to the ping of sensational news. It's kind of like a big process addiction. It's the way it's presented. So I think part of what we have to look at here is not only having the superb material that is supported factually, but presenting it in a way that a international society with ADD can absorb it.
Yeah.
ADD, attention to deficit, whatever it is, disclosure. I'm very familiar with the disorder. I dealt with it all my life with children. But you've hit the nail on the head. That's what the media is all about. They do have a serious attention deficit disorder with respect to marginal information. As soon as they feel that this information will be cut off at the knees, it's almost well, there's nothing to it, then they just leave it alone. So I go back to my point about finding a publicist or a publisher. I think is on the cusp of doing that. And I think Canadian media is a little to the Alien Cosmic Expo coming up here in June. We could talk about that later. That's why we did the disclosure effort last year
Yes.
At the Alien Cosmic Expo. We're trying to get this onto the mainstream media and
And we apologize, folks, if the signal is cutting out here.
and that internet media works in sort of an integrated whole. And once it comes onto the mainstream wire, if you want to call it that, then it can go anywhere from there. So that's one of the efforts that we're trying to do with bringing forward Stephen Greer with his film documentary Unacknowledged and all of the incredible information that documentary has. And we're taking a big risk because there's a lot of critics out there about Steve, and I understand that the criticism is well founded as far as some people are concerned. The fact of the matter is that I will do everything and anything within my jurisdiction to put this on a platform, international media, going through the Canadian media. It doesn't matter what I do, who I can get. That's why we did the hearings last year. Doesn't matter what I can do. My whole perspective is getting this is onto the to this area. And once you pay attention to it, it'll be a cosmic Watergate. It'll be something that you say, like I said earlier in our conversation, how long has this been going on, and why didn't I know about this before? Well, you know why? You've been asleep at the switch. There are a number of journalists that I've made this known to. And they all know about it, but they just don't pay attention to it. So we're waiting. It's like, we're waiting for Godot. We're waiting for that big package to arrive on the doorstep of, gosh, how long this been going on? Well, you know what? You guys haven't been paying attention. Here it is. Do what you want with it. And whatever guidance you want, we're here. We've done the research. You don't have to do any more research at all. All you have to do is talk to the top 3 journalists or registered lobbyists or researchers on this. Talk to Richard Dolan. Talk to Steve Bassett. Talk to Stephen Greer. Talk to
Yeah.
Stanton Friedman. Talk to Robert Salas.
Right.
They'll give you all the information. In 15 minutes, you'll have the whole enchilada.
Yeah.
So you have to go from there and decide what you want to do with this. Rather than dealing with the cyclical war economy, the trillions and trillions of dollars of debt, the maniacal man involved at the White House, whatever issue you want to talk about.
And hoping this is still being recorded, folks.
And the American public, international public, are totally consumed by them. So what we need to do, is wipe clean, put the real issues on the plate, and see how the mainstream media deals with it. That's where my perspective is, and that's what Z9 Communication wants to do of this issue, is wipe the slate clean, especially the war economy. The United States government is and where it's all going, because there's some serious issues here. If we keep ourselves involved in the war, we're going to be a dead civilization. It is going to be a civilization that is, how would I characterize it? An extinction behavior. We are involved right now in extinction behaviors, and that's what we're doing. Doesn't matter where you step off on any of the media trails that you see on CBS and NBC and all those stations. We are involved in extinguishing ourselves as a species. And if we want to continue down that road, well, yeah, we've got to pay the price. And if Donald Trump pushes that damn button, boys and girls, we're not going to be able to have this conversation next week. So we're in a really very difficult position here. And that's why I continue to put forward the idea that if the issue is not brought forward in a rational, salient, intelligent, academic way, I don't see much hope for humanity.
Yes, and we certainly, in my way of believing, we've as a society or as hominids, we've been down this road before, and we don't seem to be learning from our mistakes. And one thing I would maybe point out, as far as some of the solid evidence and solid science that's coming down recently, Ancient Aliens is in its 11th season, which certainly points to a profound amount of interest. If there wasn't interest in our prehistory, in our own genetic origins, there would be no 11 seasons of Ancient Aliens. And what we are now learning through our newly sophisticated DNA analyses, they're analyzing the Paracas skulls. We now understand that there were Europeans in North America millennia before so-called Native Americans, and some of these some of them are very hot buttons. And these things are, I think, in a way, to use a media term, sexy enough to grab the attention of mainstream media.
Exactly. Oh, I completely agree with you. When I first began watching Ancient Aliens, and I know some of the people who have appeared on that show before, I wasn't skeptical, but I was saying, well, where are they going with all of this? But the more I watched what they're putting forward, is a hearkening back to our origins. And it goes back to what I was saying initially about what mainstream media will buy into. So is the concept of Ancient Aliens, let's forget about the program for a second, the concept of Ancient Aliens and where we've come from and all of that information. If the evidence that we can produce right now that will tell people, tell humanity, tell civilization that right now we are being engaged by world civilization, and in some way we get the acquiescence and say, well, yeah, that might be so. Well, another story here for you folks. This has been going on for thousands of years. These people are responsible for us being on the planet, responsible for the kinds of chromosomes that we're, and all the stuff you're mentioning, Leslie. And people are going to say, oh, no, that's just, I can't deal with that. But at what stage do people accept the kind of ideas that you just brought forward, Leslie, in terms of where we've come from as a species? Where will that fit into the dialogue that we're having right now? And we have to place that someplace. Eventually, if we introduce the idea that we're being engaged right now, and people understand it, media talks about it, and it becomes part of our discourse right now, then and only then will we be able to go back and some of the stuff that's on these incredible of holy smoke. Do you mean to say there's no such thing as evolution, and that we are a strand of beings that have come from stars far away? Well, yes, maybe. And as difficult as that might be for our civilization to handle, eventually they'll get to understand it in the same way that they'll get to understand that NORAD is tracking UFOs on a daily basis.
Sure.
So you've got a really difficult balance here, okay? You've got to balance those two things. Introduce people to the simplest possibility of what's going on. I'm a teacher, okay? And I taught, grade 3 up to grade 8, okay, in elementary school and as a principal. I'm not going to talk about division of fractions with grade 1s. How do you divide? I can't do it. I can't. There is number one. There's no way that grade 1 children could even conceptually understand what the division is, and then division of fractions, and what a fraction is. So I have okay, folks. Here's addition. 1 plus 1 is 2.
Right.
And then you move on from there. So you introduce people, and as a civilization, we're not that much more complex than grade 1 students understanding these very, very complex issues.
Indeed.
We're not much more, so we have to take our time with this. And the more we foist, as you said earlier, Leslie, esoteric issues, very highly esoteric issues on society, they just go, oh, no, I can't deal with that. Let's go back to what we really want to talk about. So if we were to characterize it, what are the basics? Well, the basics, as far as I'm concerned, are that, well, we're not alone, and we've got some evidence to show you. Do you want to hear about it? And then go from there. That's what I try to do. And if I move too quickly, these journalists, they just turn right off. They don't want to hear any more than that. So it's a really delicate balance that we have to engage in. And sometimes I think some of the researchers and authors and whatever in the UFO ET issue, they're moving too quickly in terms of trying to. It's just the whole idea of consciousness, this interconnectivity of every single part of the universe, and that we are sentient beings that have some sort of connectivity to the cosmos. I understand it. You guys get that. The number of people that we engage with, they get it. But is this general social order, journalists, media people, are they ready for that kind of information? And if we do try to put forward that kind of information too soon, will they just sort of turn us off and say, bye? It's this, whatever, these ideas that are far too ahead of the curve. So we have to be very, very careful in doing that. And I go back to my teaching experience again. You have to take people from where they are and understanding who and what they are and what they understand as a community, and the media is a good example, and then move them forward a little bit at a time to say, and I go back to my question again. If they ask us the question, what's this all about? How long has it been going on? And why didn't we know about it? Well, do you really want to know what's going on? And then the whole blast comes forward after that. And I've talked to a number of journalists that are at that point right now. So, that's I'm repeating myself ad nauseum here, but that's where we have to start. If we do stuff too quickly, we lose. If we do it in a more pedantic and sequential and intelligent academic way, I think we bait the hook. And I know media well enough. If you bait the hook properly, if you're going to get some really serious spikes. But if you put too big a portion of bait, they'll just walk the other way. So it's a very difficult it's a very difficult question. There's no real good way to approach the issue, other than a very slow, I guess, intelligent way of putting this issue forward in the mainstream media community.
So, Victor, I have two different points. It's not exactly a banquet of choices, it's two. But choose your one or choose both. One is I want to harken back to something you said, and it's, of course, we've relatively recently gone through a change of government at the federal level. So, do you think our current government is any more accessible or interested? And the other question is completely different. It's about the recent Chilean footage that's being released.
Okay, I got the first, the government. The second question.
Oh, okay. Second question was something that's on your news service about the Chilean footage that's being released.
Okay, yeah. Number one, in terms of government, uh, government to me, there are the people who have been elected, who sit in Parliament or in Congress, and they're very innocent, naive people. They really all they're um, that's really all they're interested in at this point. At what point do you or could you possibly introduce any of these people who are representative of government? And I'm not talking about the bureaucracy of government or the intelligence agencies. How do you get people who've been elected to become imbued with, interested in, or even conversant with, or even aware of what this issue is all about? How do you do that? I've got a few ideas about that, but I don't know if they're that effective, or even if it's terror. They're dead. They're brain dead. They have no concept of where to go with creative understandings of where humanity is going. All they're
Right.
involved with is their own constituency and governmental policy for that issue. They're not interested in any kind of creative notions about where humanity is going. So, how do you appeal to those people? In my frame of reference right now, they are irrelevant. Government is
Right.
irrelevant. Media, substantial media right now is our only hope for this, because they're the only blowhorn. They're the only conduit through the rest of
Right.
how civilization will understand this. So that's my perspective. Government right now is just like it's passe. They'll get on board eventually once the media picks up this issue, if it does, when it does. But right now, I don't want to talk to any people, politicians, say, "Oh, please, can you just let me look at
Right.
this document." Even if they did, it's a non-issue. So media is where we have to go to create an understanding and awareness. As much as I don't like how media operates, I mean they're just as selfish as government is, but they have an agenda of putting forward information. Government doesn't do that. Media puts forward information, and
Right.
if we can convince media to do this, then we're on the right page, at
Okay.
least to put it forward. Now, the other part of your question was in
About the
terms of,
Chilean footage.
yeah, the Chilean footage. It is probably some of the best illustrative ways of getting photographic information and documented photographic information in front of media. The Chilean government has been, and the Mexican government, by the way, have been very, very proactive, as have the Belgian government, in putting forward credible, very, very credible radar and photographic information about UFO quote unquote sightings or radar captures. And this kind of information is probably one of the better conduits through which media might be able to say, remember I mentioned earlier to you the baiting the hook kind of thing? If
Yeah.
media can say, my goodness, here we've got this information on photo radar, we've got this stuff on radar. I mean, how can you discount this? And even if you attempt to discount it may be discounted in several different ways by critics or whatever it is, but that not dismiss the fact that it must be investigated. You know, you know, it, the government will put forward information about videos of police officers mishandling, citizens, on the highway when they get off and
Right.
stop. The video evidence is all right there. You can see the officer going up, handcuffing people and everything, and then it goes to court and it says this or that about whatever the relevance of that photographic evidence is. And someone could be convicted or not convicted about a crime with respect to this video evidence. Why would the same kinds of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
evidentiary than other stuff that's put forward to convict people?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really double-handed of evidence is credible, but if it's about UFOs, oh well, it's just no, never mind about that stuff because it couldn't possibly be true. So we have to reconcile the differences between those two sets of evidence. One is credible because it's on a highway someplace in Ohio, and the other set of evidence is in the sky over Chile or New Mexico, and it may or may not be relevant because the pilots were drunk at the time or whatever.
Right.
It's that whole because this issue is so far-fetched, is so implausibly possible that people will generally in mainstream media will um, uh, and admonitions and realizations from NORAD that we've tracked these things. We track these things. I have a letter, and you probably know about this, that I disclosed at the hearings last year. We have a letter from the NORAD commander saying that on average, over 5 years, 1,800 unidentified flying objects, or as they call them, unknowns, are tracked by NORAD. And over the last 5 years, and every year 75 intercepts over the last. So what are they intercepting? What are they? And there's no revelation of what these guys are intercepting, what they're
Uh-huh.
capturing on radar. So why not make that evidence clear and open to the public?
Indeed. Victor, I wonder there might be a little ray of hope. The current Pope, who I think is an incredibly admirable man, recently made
Mm-hmm.
some statements that were in every newswire, every publication, where he came out and said that he believed that there was life on other planets and that it in no way was conflicting with any sort of Catholic document or philosophy. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but there's been a lot of
Of course, yeah.
scuttlebutt that he may be the disclosure pope. And in fact, I'm a lapsed Catholic, but there are billions, perhaps, of practicing adherent Catholics, including high-powered families like the Kennedys, who would certainly be very, very open to any kind of statement of disclosure that the Pope made. And a few years ago, when they were doing some restorations at the Vatican, some very unusual skeletons were found in the catacombs, which were
Mm-hmm.
not human. And this was a little tiny story, on a back page and on, fringe websites and all these things that Wes and I are always looking at. But do you think, can you conceive of this Pope and the tremendous media attention that he inspires, not to mention the huge populations of receptive people that he has influence over, being a part
Mm-hmm.
of disclosure?
Wow, talk about a loaded question. Yeah, I can no, I completely understand where you're coming from, and as a Catholic myself, I'm not quite sure I call it a lack. I definitely have some definite views on the institutional way the Catholic Church is operated. I'm a very spiritual person. I understand Catholicity. I understand that the position of the Vatican on a number of major issues in terms of the millions of Catholics across the planet. I understand all of that, and the Catholic Church is a valued institution. I don't think we can even with all of its problems. I mean, admittedly, it has its difficulties, but I think that the conduit of understanding as to who we are as spiritual beings is a way of understanding for millions of people who call themselves Catholic, be that one way or another. It's the same thing with Buddhists or the Hindu religion and all of that. It's just a way of knowing. It's just another way of knowing. Now, with respect to Francis, I think he's an enlightened man. I really do think that he, as a Jesuit, which is very rare for the Catholic Church to have elected a Jesuit as a pope, is insurmountably
Yeah,
understandable.
yeah.
Not understandable because this is not something the Catholic Church would have ordinarily done, is elect a
So
Jesuit
true.
as pope.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that in and of itself, and I know that because I know people in the Jesuit order and what they stand for and where they come from. They are the soldiers of the church, and they are extremely divergent in their opinion. And the Curia is just wringing their hands about why did we do this with this man? That's just the way it happened. So I think Pope Francis an understanding of what Catholicity is. And I also believe that through some of his advisors, one of them, Father Gabriel Funes, who was the former director of the observatory in Gandolfo,
Yes.
he has made a statement about the fact that extraterrestrials could exist, and if they are in fact, in existence, they are our brothers. I mean, and for the Catholic Church to say that, that's unprecedented.
Yeah.
So what does that
Incredible.
really mean? So I think that the Vatican has some understandings that they have not made clear to the rest of their followers. That in fact that there are off-world civilizations out there who have manifested themselves in a many different ways within the Catholic framework. And I'll refer to you specifically to Fatima. That whole issue, I don't want to get into describing what Fatima was, but the Catholic Church has tried to describe Fatima as a religious event. It wasn't a religious event. Fatima was an listen to me very carefully here, boys and girls. Fatima was an extraterrestrial event. Make no mistake about it. And the church did the best they could at the time to explain it as the Virgin Mary coming and doing this and doing that. I'm sorry, folks, nobody buys that anymore.
Yeah.
Okay? And there are a number of other issues. It's the way the church has brought forward religious experiences or events as being ordinarily religious events rather than being off world representations of who these beings are and how they manifest themselves to the faithful or to whoever is seeing them at the time. And Fatima is a prime example, and there's a number of other ways that extraterrestrials have manifested themselves to humanity, but the church has imbued a religious connotation to what this might be. Mistake. Big mistake. And I think Francis recognizes that. So he's in a position now to say, well, where do I go with this stuff? Where do
Right.
I go to with Guadalupe? Where do I go with Fatima? Where do I go with the resurrection? Where do I go? Where do we go with this whole idea of the ascension of
Yeah.
Christ after he was? Where do we go with all that stuff? There are there are two divergent answers to that. One is the traditional biblical account. The angels come back and roll back the stone, and he came up and he wrote, blah, 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 you go on. Or the fact of the matter is that Christ could have been a representation of some kind of off-world being that came down to the planet to spread a message of love and understanding. Now, when will the church move into that realm rather than the biblical account? So we've got a really difficult problem here. The church has to reconcile that. So if disclosure does happen, they're going to have to really come to grips with the fact that,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
we've got all these biblical understandings, and then we've got this ET kind of root of going where humanity's come from. What do we do with that? I have no answer to that question. I think I know which way I would lean, but I don't have a way of understanding that, and also of trying to advise or even predict how Francis will explain that to the rest of humanity. And if the ET issue does come forward, the current Pope, whoever it might be at the time, is going to have to do a really special dance to say, okay, folks, you know what? We got some news for you here. What we've been telling you for the past 2,000 years since Christ died might be a little different than what we've told in the past. You're going to have to sit down for this, guys and girls, because you're going to have to really. Now, you know what I believe. My personal opinion, I believe in a risk. Okay, I do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to equivocate on that. I believe
Mm-hmm.
that Christ was a very important person. He rose from the dead. He was crucified. He rose from the dead. However, that came about wasn't because God told him to do this. It's something imbued in this whole off-world scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow is a connection there. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what it is. So the Catholic Church has to somehow create some converging lines of evidence to reconcile what Catholicism and even the rest of Christianity has been told over the past 2,000 years,
Mm-hmm.
and bring into that whole discussion of the cosmic existence of off-world civilizations, and that we've been contacted, and some, most, if not all, of the so-called religious, mystical experiences that we've been exposed to are in fact off-world experiences rather than so-called God coming down to say, I'm tapping on
Mm-hmm.
your telephone booth here, boys and girls, and listen to me right now. Uh, I mean, we really have to come to grips with that issue, and it's going to be a sea change and a really, really big pill to swallow for a lot of people.
Indeed, Victor. And, we just have believe it or not, we just have a few minutes left. It's been such a delight
Wow.
speaking with you
Yeah.
today. Would you like to give our listeners a little overview or about Alien Cosmic Expo and how to get their
Yes,
tickets and what's going on?
sure. Good. Good. Thank you very much for giving me that opportunity. Yes, the Alien Cosmic Expo will be happening in Toronto at the Crown Plaza Hotel near the airport,
Mm-hmm.
very close to a major center point for travelers. It'll be happening on June 23rd, 24th, and 25th of June, and they can go to the aliencosmicexpo.com, and you can find out all the speakers that are going to be there, what the prices are, and most of all, I think I really want to emphasize the fact that Dr. Stephen Greer will be lecturing along with Paul Hellyer on the
Mm-hmm.
Saturday afternoon on the ET issue.
Yes.
Paul will be talking about the whole global crisis and the new
Mm-hmm.
U.S. administration and how it all fits into this whole distorted paradigm of the UFO issue, and Stephen will be talking more as his documentary Unacknowledged that had a premiere in L.A.
Mm-hmm.
Just last week, a hugely
Mm-hmm.
successful premiere, and we're going to be having the Canadian premiere of the film documentary Unacknowledged at the
Mm-hmm.
Alien Cosmic Expo on
Okay.
Saturday evening,
Mm-hmm.
June the 24th.
Fourth.
So yeah, go to Alien Cosmic Expo and pick all the information up. And we really want people to be part of this because we try to do better than we did last year with with the hearings. And I think with Paul Hess and Stephen Greer at the expo this year, we've kind of set it up another notch. So it's another reason why disclosure is on the precipice of being something that mainstream media can really pick up on, and we're hoping that people can attend and make this a huge event and deserve the credibility that it really has in its back pocket.
Wonderful.
And Victor, how can people get a hold of you if they want to?
They can email me at zland@simpatico.ca. That's my email. I don't have you can go to my website, you Google Zland Communications, that's fine. But if people want to connect with me directly, I don't have any problems with talking to people, communicating with them. They can just use my email address, zland, ZLAND, @simpatico.ca, and I will entertain anything that they want to know about, direct them towards
Perfect.
information that they might need or whatever
Okay.
they might want to talk about. I leave myself open to that. A lot of researchers want to couch all that and say, no, don't contact. I remain open to any kind of communication with journalists, interested people. So please feel free to contact me at
Thank you.
any time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Victor, and thank you for all that you are doing. Humanity thanks you, and we're here, slogging through the marshes right now. But I believe that in our lifetime, we're going to see some amazing things occur. And bless you, and we'll see you soon. We'll see you at ACE, if not before.
For sure. And thank you very much for this opportunity, and congratulations on your work. And thank you very much for taking the time to talk.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Victor.
Victor.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
We are not alone. You are watching Contact TV with your hosts, Leslie Mitchell-Clark
and Wes Roberts.
exploring ufology, metaphysics, and beyond with the world's foremost experts.